Welcome to Spider-Verse Minute, the tri-weekly podcast where we watch Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 1 minute at a time. I'm Sean Slater.
And I'm his sister Caroline.
And today we're watching minute 27, which opens with Miles asking Peter how he is and ends a minute later with Miles running away from Peter. I wonder what Peter said to make him so afraid. Sorry. What did you name this minute?
I have titled this minute A Promise.
This is a very good name. I like that name.
Not one of my more comedic ones, but it felt wrong to comedically title this one.
Yeah, this one is a talkie minute.
It's a talkie minute.
It's quite literally a minute of talking.
It's quite a heavy minute, too, in many ways.
Yeah. It's very like when Miles first approaches Peter, he's very jokey still. He's like, "Oh yeah, hey, joke." Yeah. But then when he coughs, he's like, "Oh yeah, that ain't good."
Coughing ain't good. Yeah. I think he says should probably get that looked at or something.
Yeah, it's a very quick tone of funny Spider to very serious, or funny Spidey to very serious Spidey.
He turns very serious after you hear Kingpin in the background say, "Find him."
Yeah.
And then
he's like, okay,
Spider-Man just quick. Mouth vomits.
Yeah.
All of this stuff onto Miles. And part of me is just like, no pressure, Miles.
Yeah. Here, this is my last moments. Quickly, let's get through this.
Here's the thing, you gotta do this up there and there, okay, you got this? And it's like,
Yeah, I mean, his line after coughing is literally just, we gotta team up here, we don't got much time.
Yeah, it's like,
let's get through this really quickly.
Yeah, you wanted to talk about, emotional whiplash earlier. This is one.
Although, you think he could, maybe talk a bit quieter, because he's talking very loudly to this person that he doesn't really want them to know is here.
Yeah, I know. He never says his name.
No, he doesn't.
So
at least that's a good thing.
Now one thing I do want to talk about very quickly is during this moment there's a very sweet moment where Miles and Spider-Man are kind of just looking at each other, and at that point Peter asked Miles, promise me you'll do this.
Yeah.
And I really thought it was a very smart decision to, instead of just having the mask completely intact, in the destruction, one of the eye holes blow, and you can see part of Peter's eye.
Yeah.
So they're able to animate that emotion in his eye. And so we can see it instead of just staring at this, white mask.
They usually do a good job of using the eyes on the mask to emote, though.
Yes.
And I think they would have been able to also do it, but they in the one of the commentaries they actually talked about how hard this was to animate, to keep to have one Spidey eye and one human eye exposed each, because it was really hard to keep it from just the eye on the mask that was still intact from overpowering his human eye.
Yeah.
And so they had to figure out a way of okay, how much do we animate it versus keeping it still? Because if it was completely still, it looked very weird having only one eye moving around when we're used to seeing two eyes animate.
Yeah, I thought the work paid off. I really think the work paid off, but I just think it was a very clever, because it takes it out of this, Superman talking to a kid to a person talking to a person.
Yeah, and it also, instead of having the mask just completely broken off, or turn off, it's his promise to both sides of Peter.
Yeah.
It's him making the promise that he'll be Spider-Man, but also, remember to stay human.
It's a very, I don't want to say sweet, but it's a very heavy moment.
It's bittersweet.
Yeah, it's a very bittersweet moment, and it's a very heavy moment that I appreciate. I feel not enough kids' movies go for the full heavy moments, or at least really commit to them. I feel like it's a nice heavy moment for both kids and adults, and not enough animated films in general, but especially kids' films, do that.
Yeah, so I really liked how the one thing that they talked about in the commentary was also how, like, during this really intimate moment between Peter and Miles, um, they kept going back and forth on like what Peter's message was to Miles, and like I think they ultimately settled on
Before you do that, what do you
yeah,
think Peter's message was to Miles?
um, don't let everybody die. No, what do you mean?
I mean, good message. Good message to have. I'm just curious what your interpretation of what his message was. Because I never really thought of it, so now I'm thinking about it now.
Um, so it's like, I mean, it's Peter's crash course in how to be a superhero. Um, it's pretty much, don't let anyone know who you are,
Mm-hmm.
and you gotta, protect everyone because that's what we do.
Yeah. I almost feel like Peter's message was a very rushed and not the best executed way of saying almost great power takes great responsibility, but you have to be careful as well. Like, you're responsible now.
Yeah,
Which, again, no pressure, Miles.
yeah. I think it's really just like Peter realizing that he's done here, and he needs to like kind of make sure that the um, the work that he's doing is carried on by somebody,
Mm-hmm.
and he realizes like Miles' potential here, and so he just needs to sort of like give Miles a reason to start doing it, and um, like prep for yeah, I guess just give him a reason to do to start doing this, and then once he starts doing it, I think like Peter recognizes that Miles will continue to do it.
You think Peter sees a bit of himself in Miles? And their brief interactions they've seen each other?
Yeah, I could I maybe more senses it.
Mm-hmm. So you started, before I rudely interrupted you, talking about what the animator's goal was.
Oh, just the message kept changing.
Yeah. So
I mean,
what did they end up going? Did they say in the commentary what they
this
ended up
message,
doing?
like
Oh,
the message that we saw, like
oh. Then I think they nailed it.
yeah. It was they like their the literal message, like the thing that that Spider-Man says to Miles, kept getting changed, and like as the the story changed throughout the movie, and like
Mm-hmm.
what the different focuses were, it kept this was the sort of like this is when Pete or Miles becomes Spider-Man,
Mm-hmm.
like when it's his first major step being like, okay, I am Spider-Man now, but it's before he like fully accepts being Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Um, and this is just Peter's like this is that handoff.
Yeah. This actually kind of transitions perfectly to my next note, which is shocking, I know, but the music in the
Yeah,
background.
yeah. His
um,
heroic music comes back.
yeah, well, because so we talked about reasons how it was very ominous music, and then when Peter is asking Miles to, promise me you'll do this, you kind of quietly hear it come back, but it
Yeah,
isn't until Miles nods in agreement did the music finally swell and you can hear it, and it feels very much of like a passing of the torch.
yeah. It's and I think they do a good job of showing Miles's um like decision making. Like you can see he doesn't just like agree right away. He goes to him and
Mm-hmm.
he's like, I don't know what you're talking, like why are you telling me this stuff, and he looks confused at first, and
You can
then
see the panic
um
as well of
yeah,
like, oh gosh, what's happening?
but then after like and they have that great moment of just like there's like a second or two of them just staring at each other before Miles is like, okay, yeah, I promise to do this.
Yeah. And one of the things I love that ends the minute, that kind of, I think is Peter seeing that panic in Miles, and then his, like, almost reluctant acceptance.
Yeah.
Is, like, when Miles is running away to hide, you hear Peter saying, "It's gonna be okay."
Yeah, it's his, like, oh, I guess I should say something reassuring real quick.
It's like, it's gonna be, I'll see you soon, I'll see you soon. It's like, it's gonna be
Yeah.
okay. It's like, but I think they both know it's not gonna be okay.
Yeah.
But it's just, I just thought it was another sweet moment of where Peter is just trying to help Miles.
Yeah, it's, Peter taking care of everyone else,
Mm-hmm.
even in his last moments.
Do you have any other notes?
I have two more quick things. It's amazing that the key survived.
Oh yeah.
That, like, somehow it's still intact after all of this.
He must have some secure pockets or something.
It's a very strong key.
Miles seems completely untouched in this as well.
Yeah, I mean, he did just, like, he was kind of off to the side and just fell
that's
down.
True.
Like, he wasn't really in the middle of it. But then the other thing was, I forgot that this Spidey was voiced by Chris Pine.
Yeah.
I don't know if I just haven't seen enough stuff with him in it to like pick out his voice immediately. But, like, as I was going through, I was like, oh yeah, this Spider-Man, la 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 la. And then in one of the commentaries, they're like, oh yeah, and Chris did a really good job of voicing this. I was like, oh yeah, and, like, now that I think, like, whenever I picture him saying it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's totally him.
Yeah, I think we talked about him being the voice actor in, like, an earlier minute, like the first time we see
Yeah,
Peter.
We touched on it before, but
yeah. I don't know if I said this then, but just in case I didn't realize it was him until I saw a meme on Facebook that said, Marvel's just getting all the Chris's. They now have Chris Pine voicing Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I'm like, wait, what? And then and if you look at when the movie was still in theaters, I think, when you looked up the cast list, it didn't say who Chris Pine was playing, but they had him listed in the cast, like, online. And then it was, like, the third time I saw it, I'm like, okay, I gotta watch. And then there was his name, and I'm like, it is him.
I remember the, like, sort of opposite of that was they announced him as Spider-Man, and, like, when the trailer came out and they were playing Peter B. Parker, the people were like, that's not him. What? Did they have to, like, recast him as something? Like, because it wasn't, in the trailers, it wasn't clear that those were two different Spider people.
Yeah.
And so people were really confused, like, oh, did they have to recast him or something? Like, what's up with this?
Yeah. Yeah, that was confusing too. I'm like, but that's not Chris Pine's voice. Because I also originally thought it was Peter B. Parker. So I'm like, that's not Chris Pine's voice. And then I was rewatching it, thinking, like, okay, I need to listen for Chris Pine. And it was like that, but I'm like, oh, there he is.
Yeah, but that's all the notes I had for this minute.
Yeah, that's all the notes I have. So thank you all for listening. We will catch you next week when we talk about minute 28. If you want to reach out to us, you can find us on Twitter at SpiderVerseMin, M-I-N, or on Facebook at Spider-Verse Minute, Instagram at Spider-Verse Minute, YouTube at Spider-Verse Minute, and if you want to email us at podcast@spiderverseminute.com. Thanks for listening.
Bye.